If we are asked to write something out, perhaps for our children or grandchildren, or to write some kind of a statement that says, who are you, and what has been the most important part of your life? What is your legacy? As we remember you later, what are the most important things that we should remember? And I'm sure that if we were asked in that way, what we would begin to try to write down, to express, would be those peak moments, those important times in our life where we realized something, where we knew that our lives would never again be the way they were before. And we would want to recount those instances. Perhaps if we're married, it's the day we met our spouse, or the day we realized that we were in love with them. Maybe it was the day our first child was born. Maybe it was the day of tragedy, the day of pain and suffering that informed who we became after that. These are the kinds of questions we ought to be keeping in mind this week, and it's the kind of questions that our readings ask us to think about tonight. Scripture scholars tell us that the first part of all four Gospels, the first part that was written, were the Passion accounts. One famous scholar even says the Passion accounts are the Gospels with long introductions. It's all about the Passion of Christ. That's the part that the Gospel writers start with. And as they had time, they added introduction to it. But if they were only going to be able to get one part down, it was this account. This is why I am Christian. This is why I follow this man, this Son of God. This is why. We see a similar thing in the second reading, and maybe this second reading can help inform all the rest. We've seen this reading before. This is the famous hymn in which St. Paul describes Christ emptying himself completely into human nature, without giving up his divinity, but he empties himself completely into human nature, even so far as to go to the cross. But before Paul says this, we must remember where he is. He's in prison. He knows he will probably never write or communicate another message outside of that prison. This is the message he wants people to remember. And just before he begins the passage we heard, he says, if you would give me any sort of consolation, if you would make my joy complete, your mind should be that of Christ. You should see all other persons as being more important than you. Their needs as more important than your needs. You should be like Christ, who emptied himself completely and did not grasp divinity. That's really what this is all about. It's about us following Christ's example in emptying ourselves. The fancy word for that is called kenosis. Well, what does kenosis mean? It means that when we have an argument, we don't always have to have the last word. It means that when things go wrong in our life, we don't try to find someone else to blame. When someone else is in need, we don't think of ourselves first and what that cost will be. That's the challenge for us. And I would submit to you that this week, this holy week, we remember that this is not just about recalling historical events in the life of Christ, but rather as disciples in faith of people who profess to follow the way of Christ, that we follow him in that self-emptying and ask ourselves, what does kenosis look like in my life today, at this moment? Is this an opportunity for me to say, no, not me, you? You, not me. Every act of every every day. Are we thinking of the needs of others as greater than our own? Are we seeing other people as being more important than we are? That's kenosis. That's the downward path that we are called to if we then wish to seek the glorious path of Easter. This week, it's all about